everyone. Welcome back to the Command Your Brand Show. This is an episode in our Icon series where we're interviewing some of our past clients over the many years that have been successful, to the highest degree of other people we've worked with. And we want to find out what they're doing, what they're thinking, why they are so. Reminder before we jump into this episode that if you have not subscribed to this channel yet, you want to smash that subscribe button. If you want to command your brand, like this video, leave us a comment, and definitely support this channel. So Grant Wise, I'm excited to have you back with us today, man. You are kicking ass in the real estate world and the tech world as always. So thanks for hanging out with me today, man.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.
So for people that may not know you and what you do, man, tell us a little bit about how you help the world out there.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I am a marketing coach consultant in the real estate space. I've been doing this for about a decade. I focus on the marketing, advertising, sales side of the business. So I don't actually sell real estate, but I step into some of the largest organizations in the world, really. And my focus is helping them understand how to create predictable growth. I'm an expert at direct response marketing. And so I spend a lot of time on topics related to lead gen, remarketing, email marketing, sales funnels, sales automations, how to scale winning campaigns, just a lot of that type of stuff. And I have been doing this, for a minute. I've earned a great reputation. I get to speak on all the cool stages. And most importantly, I get to help people sell a ton of real estate. So
I'm curious because I know you've been helping, agents and agencies and people like that for years. I guess, why do you think they struggle so much with that? Like, why do you think they struggle with creating the results you're helping them get?
Real estate is still a very traditional space. I think the last statistic I read is that roughly 86% of the business is still done by referral.
Wow.
And when you step into a lot of these teams, like 40 to 50% of most of their production is from referral, sphere of influence, past clients. But that's not where they're spending all their money. They're spending their money on PPC or with Zillow or Facebook or any of these other third parties to help provide them leads. It's just that's direct response marketing compared to traditional marketing, which is radio, print, billboards, just a lot of. So I think that you saw this entire industry like collectively start throwing a ton of money to buy leads, but not fully understand like the technical infrastructure, sales automation, a lot of the back end, and not understand like how to scale those campaigns and just like how to really invest in the process. And so it's an industry that has spent a decade trying to find its sea legs in this space. There's some people that crush, like absolutely crush. They understand their acquisitional costs. They know how to reinvest in marketing campaigns and how to take their business to an entirely different level. I get to work with a lot of them. I work with teams that sell $1 billion a year, but most just, the average age of a realtor is 56 years old in the United States of America, and they don't get it. Like it's gone over their head. Some of them are making real attempts to learn it, but I just think it's such a new way of acquiring customers still. Even though this industry is spending $100 million a year on it, like it's still very new. And we've just got to continue to educate the marketplace on how they can leverage these types of things to predict their growth.
Well, and I think the important point to that too, because I think people can get overwhelmed by like, oh my gosh, I have to do this and I have to build a funnel and I have to understand this and I need text to opt in. And it's the thing I always consider is, before I started this company, I worked for a company doing, B2B marketing for industrial companies that make like orifices inside vending machines and all sorts of weird stuff. So they are like in the stone age of technology.
Yeah.
You need like if they did like 0.5% with what their competitors weren't doing, they made bank. And I think that's the thing to consider even with, with an industry like real estate is like, you don't have to do a ton. If you just get some more in than what your competitors are in, you can really do well.
100%. 100%.
So for you, one of the main ways, and this is a long time ago now, because this is back in, I think, 2016, we actually worked together. And you were actually the very first client of the first version of our agency. You did very, very well with our program, and you really were looking at podcasts. I'm curious for you, like, why were podcasts something that you're like, that's a place they need to be. It's a good place for my conversations. Like, why have you always been so interested in podcasts?
Back in the day, I think it was like Gary Vaynerchuk said, be on podcasts. So I went to try to figure out how to get on more podcasts. I don't know that I put an enormous amount of thought in it, but like after I got into doing it, it's so powerful. Marketing is a game of attention, right? Mm-hmm. This is an attention economy, and the more attention you can get and keep, the more successful that ultimately you can be. And other people already have an audience of people that you want to do business with. So naturally, if you can just get in front of their audiences, you can kind of hack the system a little bit. And for me, I think getting into it, it was like, I want to be on as many podcasts as I possibly can be because these people have attention. I need more attention. And, this is fantastic. As I got deeper into it, it became, for me, a way that I started leveraging podcasts to develop relationships. Because it's like, okay, how do I get on so many podcasts? Like, well, actually, it's really easy to get on podcasts if I do X, Y, Z. So let me do that. And so I started leveraging podcasting a little bit differently. But the reason I wanted to get on podcasts is because it's like, I need more attention. I need more people to know, like, and trust me. And so anybody that I can get on their show, I want to do that. And then those became permanent assets. Mm-hmm. People can search my name now and they're going to find me on dozens and dozens and dozens of podcast shows, which helps me build authority. It helps me establish credibility. It helps people get to know me so that by the time they actually get to me, like we're actually having a conversation, I don't have to sell anything. Mm-hmm. They're already sold. And then I can, obviously increase my earning opportunities, et cetera. And I don't think there's ever a time, because I've studied this a lot. Mm-hmm. I think the most we've generated from a sales standpoint when we were selling training was, I think it was just like $6 or $650 in a month, $650,000 in revenue.
Oh, so not $6.50.
Yeah. and like in those months, we were spending a lot of money on advertising, but we were on a lot of podcasts too. Like you couldn't go anywhere without seeing the name Grant Wise in the real estate space. And that stuff really propelled me in a big way. I mean, I went from doing 6 figures a year to 1.8 million to 3.6 million. Like this stuff just absolutely catapulted me because so many people grew to know who I was.
And I guess in terms of like niche too, because I think the idea people have that, in my opinion, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that people have this idea of like they need to be on like this really well-named person show and that really well-named person show. But like I think actually for you, like you're really defining a niche and you have to actually communicate to a certain group. So I guess for you, was the niche important? And if so, how did you really define like what your niche should look like?
I think that you could go buy 1,000 marketing books from all over the world, and every one of them would tell you to know who you're marketing to, like in chapter 1. Like you're understanding who your ideal customer.
Though, and you probably see this with a lot of people you work with. A lot of people don't consider that out of the gate, man.
Nobody wants to niche down. Everybody wants to work with everybody. And what I always tell people is the person that works with everyone works with no one.
Yes.
It's a good thing to remember. Excuse me. The riches are in the niches. Like you've got to understand who your ideal customer is. Because I help people create content every day and they're like, I just don't know what to say. It's like, it's not that you don't know what to say. Because if I ask you a specific question, you give me a really good answer. It's that you don't know who you're talking to. And if you can identify who your ideal customer is, it makes it way easier to create content. But again, this is a game of attention. If you don't know who your customer is, you don't know where to go. Mm-hmm. I knew that people in real estate, which was my niche, will listen to podcasts. And they attended real estate events and that they hung out in Facebook groups. And so I wanted to be where they were. That's the game. If I've got to go where my market is, if my audience didn't listen to podcasts, I would not be on podcasts. Mm-hmm. That's very important to know and understand. And so like it's everything. If you don't know who you're talking to, it makes it very, very difficult to go out there and perform. I help real estate agents wrestle with this idea every single day. And that's where that little tag came from. The person works with everyone, works with no one. You got to know who your customer is so that you know where to go to get in front of them. You know what to talk about. You know how to position yourself. Like you got to know who your customer is.
And I guess, is there like a, I'm trying to think of how to put this. Is there like a too granular versus well-defined? Like here, I gave this example as a joke in a blog post I wrote. Like the people can sometimes get too specific, like COOs who don't like CEOs, who play underwater polo, but not on Wednesdays, pet giraffes and hate zebras. Like, can you get like, cause I think people have this idea of like, they hear the avatar and I need to define my avatar and his name is Joe and I'm going to talk to him. But like, can you get too granular or what does that look like for you?
I think that you can. I think that you can. I don't think that it hurts you to have a very specific insight and understanding who your ideal customer is. Like I know a lot about my ideal client. I like a whole lot.
What's the most surprising thing you know about your ideal client?
Like it's just all the little subtleties. Like I have an iPhone because most of my ideal clients have iPhones. I drink Starbucks, or at least have like a Starbucks cup, because I know that typically my ideal client likes Starbucks.
Okay, that's pretty granular. That's awesome.
Like if you can grow to understand, because then there's subconscious signals that get sent when I go to a real estate event, as an example, and somebody sees me with an iPhone. It's a subconscious connection. He has an iPhone. I have an iPhone. They're not thinking about that.
Yeah.
But it's a link. It's a subconscious link. It's the same thing with a Starbucks cup. It's the same thing if I cuss and you cuss. It's the same thing if I like the Mercedes and you like the Mercedes. Like all of these are subconscious links that, from a perception standpoint, help somebody develop a relationship with you without even thinking about it. And I, as a marketer, I obsess over all of the psychological details, because there are subconscious ways that you can win the game, which makes it feel like you're never selling anybody. You know how many people I get on the phone with that are like signing up to pay me thousands of dollars a month, and they're like, I never even asked. It's because we've built this. I've been very intentional about developing a relationship with them. I understand who they are, what they think, what they like, what they don't. I take positions on things. I'm for something. I'm against something. I like all of these things help you develop a relationship with your ideal. So can you get too granular? I think yes. Like you definitely can get lost in the weeds on this, but I think that there's like a little bit of a difference. Like I got started teaching real estate agents Facebook ads. Okay. Well, my market at the time was 1.2 million realtors. The number of realtors that use Facebook ads was like 10,000 people. So it wasn't like I had this gigantic consumable market. That's very small, but niching down like that, I had an audience, they had money, they needed leads. I think there's a lot that can be unpacked there. Yes, you can get too granular, but I've not really seen it yet.
Well, I think that the important distinction that you made there is you have a lot of data on your audience, so you also know how to position things correctly too. I think that's really, really important. I think because it's a causative viewpoint and not an effect viewpoint, right? Like it's like, okay, if I have this data, I can X, Y, Z. It's not like, oh, because I didn't have this, I can't win. But it's a causative viewpoint. So I think it's a really important, thing to note there. I guess looking at when you approach a podcast or an interview or a YouTube show and you're like the guest, like how are you approaching that? Like how are you like, preparing? How are you showing up? Like what is your viewpoint?
I'm probably not the best example here. I am a master at what I do. I'm very good. And I have a lot of confidence in that. I'm not trying to be arrogant.
No, but I would agree with that because I've gotten that feedback from other people about you. So I agree with you on that.
Like the feedback that I always get is like, this guy's a genius. I would have not said that about myself. But if everybody I talk to says it, you kind of start to be like, maybe I'm smart. Now, that was not my like childhood, right? I grew up, I thought I was dumb until I was like 22 because that's what school taught me, is that I wasn't very smart. And so, I'm not saying to be arrogant. Like I certainly come from a place of thinking like, well, why would they say that about me? I'm stupid. That I've always been told I was stupid. Why are you calling me a genius? I'm not processing all of this, but I know everything that there is to know about the game that I play. And that allows me to show up anywhere, anytime, ready to execute and deliver value. I come from a place of contribution. I believe in abundance. I do not walk into these podcasts needing to sell something. I just want to show up. I just want to add value. I just want to help somebody. And I've had people get information from me, take it, and make literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I've had people do the opposite, that pay me and they get the same types of results. But I think the most important thing that I could probably, partake, because I don't show up to every podcast like, okay, they gave me a list of questions, I dove into them, I did all that.
I'll be honest with you, like as a guest, I hate that. When people send me questions, I don't read them.
I don't read them. No, I just know my stuff. Like you can't ask me a question about real estate marketing, advertising, and sales that I don't have the experience to be able to say, this is what I'm seeing, this is what works, this is what you should do, and speak from a place of authority. Like I help people that sell billions of dollars a year of real estate. that gives me a certain level of confidence that when I show up to an interview, I'm going to be able to speak in a way that communicates my authority on any specific topic. So I guess the way that I show up is like, I'm always mastering the craft. I'm always making sure that I'm studying the game. I'm in it. I'm a practitioner. I'm not somebody that is giving somebody good ideas. And I think that's the most important thing that anybody could do is like, you got to know your stuff. You got to really know it. You got to live it. For me, it's not like this is something I do. Like a lot of it is who I am. So I think that's what makes it so that I can show up in these podcasts and really truly deliver, or I can show up on a stage, or I can show up. I'm nervous. I'm certainly nervous through a lot of these. I get on the podcast with people. I'm like, man, this guy's a big deal. Or I get on a stage. I'm like, that's a lot of people. That doesn't go away, but I just want to show up and I also want to serve. I want to help people at the highest level possible. And so, yeah.
I totally get that too. I just, last week, it hasn't been published yet, but I was just interviewed by Cal Fussman. So Cal Fussman's like a guy, he's interviewed like Oprah and Muhammad Ali and Tom Cruise. And I'm like getting on, I'm kind of like shitting a brick. Like, oh my God, this guy's like really important. He ended up being a really cool guy. We get done and he's like, hey, we should exchange emails. So it's like, I think like when you do show up in a way to really service and when you do show up in a way to create value, there's also kind of a relationship you can create too. And I guess when you look at it, I feel like there's two end products to a podcast. There's people that could want to do business with you because they heard you, but there's also the possibility of working with people hosting you. I guess, what is the networking portion of podcast been like for you? And how do you approach that too? Because I think some people are like, well, do I send them my book or like, do I do something weird? Like how do you approach it too to build a relationship with somebody?
That's a great question. And in the beginning, I just took your advice. You said, have a lead magnet. So I had a lead magnet. After these podcasts would get over, I would send, like, hey, if you want to learn more about this thing, go here. But as I started to like get my sea legs in the space, I really started to see how powerful podcasting was from a relationship development standpoint. And I became extremely intentional about seeking people to be on my podcast, which would give me an uninterrupted hour with them. We'd have a great conversation. Hey, before you leave, thanks for being on the show. I would love to return the favor, which is very specific languaging. I would love to return the favor and be a guest on your show if you are looking for somebody to interview. And 9 times out of 10, people are like, yeah, I need somebody to interview. Great. What's the best way for me to link up and get that scheduled? Do you want me to follow up with your assistant? No. Let's schedule it right now. And so I would be very intentional about it while I was in a conversation with somebody, because there's a difference when you're building a relationship between the emotional moment that you're experiencing in a podcast interview and then 2-3 days later when the microwave effect is taking place and they've kind of already forgotten about most of what was even said on the podcast.
Well, yeah, and it's true because then it's like, wait, who are you? Hold on, let me check my calendar. Oh, yeah, you're that guy. Yeah, that's a really important point.
Sometimes it happens if you don't leave an impression on people, especially like if you don't show up and you're not delivering at the highest possible level, or these people are like you just described, somebody that's so busy they're interviewing Oprah. It's like, well, who's Grant? Like, it certainly can have an effect. But I became extremely intentional about leveraging podcast swaps, where it's like, let's get you on my show, and then you're here. I would love to be a guest on your show if you have a podcast. Oh, you don't have a podcast, but you have a Facebook group of 2,000 realtors and you need somebody to come in and add some value. I will happily do a free training or a presentation on what it is that I teach people. No pitch, nothing like that. Just want to add value. So I would always just say, like, what can I do that's valuable for you? And I would show up. I would dedicate my time. I would do whatever it was that I could to hack my way into this. And I think my first podcast did 165 episodes.
Wow.
And so that's 165 relationships with influential or semi-influential people where I'm most of the time getting some reciprocity in the interview where they bring me out to their Facebook group. They send an email for me. We meet at an event. So I'm very intentional about it now because it's a gateway. Like you can leverage these things to build great relationships, and that turns into business. I mean, most of the time we all have a vested interest in making money. So most of the time it's turning into more business opportunities.
And in terms of like how you're using the content you create, how do you use the content you create like after you're on a podcast? Because I think that's also a misrepresentation people have as well. They're like, they get on a podcast, they kind of just sit back and wait for leads. And sometimes that may happen, right? If they showed up and did a great job, they may have, a bunch of motion on there from the show they run. But I think there's also like, you can create motion as well. Like how do you use, I guess, podcasts in your marketing strategy to create motion?
It's everything. So I invested like $10,000, I think, a few years back. And I went to Gary Vaynerchuk's 4Ds digital deep dive, and I met with his team. And one of my biggest takeaways was their content compound strategy, where they're like, you have a foundational piece of content, and then all of your content gets created off that foundational piece of content. Well, long form interviews, it's a lot of nuggets built into like a 30, 40, 50-minute podcast interview. So we got really good at taking an episode. I would always request the raw material from the interview that I was on, or if I'm recording a podcast, obviously we already own that. And we would create 20, 25 pieces of content for every episode.
And I want to say that too before you continue, because I do the same thing, and I've never had anybody tell me no. Like, do you know what I mean? Like people are always like,
sure.
Are like, oh, well, should I ask? Shouldn't I ask? Like, ask. You'd be shocked how willing people are to give it to you, because they just want their
100%.
face out there.
100%.
Continue though. I just want to mention that.
And so I take that, we create like 25-ish pieces of content out of that. And then I'm really strategic. So we will take like shorts or reels, and we'll, like right now, as an example, I spend money to get that content out into the marketplace. Mm-hmm. So I'm running ads. And then what I'm doing is I'm creating audiences off of the people that watch a certain percentage of the content. And then I'm remarketing those people with a lead magnet to opt into something. My Wise Weekly, my podcast, the Grant Wise Show. I've got a lead magnet out there that's like top 5 ads you should run for a real estate agent, or, some other thing. And so I'm remarketing the audience that I'm building. So I leverage podcast. It's a brand building tool. It's an audience building tool or mechanism that you can use to build authority in a marketplace. It's all value, because it's all just nuggets that are being pulled out of these shows. And then I remarket that attention with other opportunities to engage with me. And then we pull them into our funnel and we sell them products and services.
Is there anything I'm not considering that I should be asking about podcasts? Because you're like a really strategic guy, so you're always thinking about every angle. Is there anything I'm missing, man? Or did we cover everything?
I think that we've covered a lot. I think that what I would say is just like the level of intentionality that you can have around doing this. There's so many different strategies and, things that can be done. But if you're strategic about how you go about podcasting, it can be one of the greatest things that you ever do, because we generated almost $7 million in cash in 2 years. And podcasting was a huge part of that, because it put me out in front of a marketplace. It's free attention. All of these people need guests. They need content. They need people to interview. And so I don't know. I think you did ask me a lot of questions. I don't know what else you could ask me.
Well, I think we covered a lot too. And it's funny because I can tell like how into the marketing you get. So I think we hit some really good stuff today. And I guess for people that are watching this, if they want to find out, more about you, if they want to, hey, maybe they're interested in their realtor and they want to get interested in your services, like how can people find out more about you? How can they follow you, man?
Go follow me on Instagram @LikeGrantWise and just send me a DM. Tell me you heard about this. Ask me a question. I answer all my DMs. I'm the one that's engaging on all my social platforms. So go ask me a question and let's connect.
Very cool. Grant Wise, thank you so much for coming on today, man.
Thanks, brother.
So if you guys enjoyed this episode, leave us a comment, hit a like, make sure you smash that subscribe button, and we'll catch you guys next time. Have a good one.